Welcome, friends, to the Teresa Lusk Show. I'm Teresa Lusk, your host, and I'm here with a spectacular guest. We have Keisha Russell. Keisha, welcome to the Teresa Lusk Show.
Thank you for having me, Teresa.
It's such an honor. Keisha is senior counsel with First Liberty Institute. She specializes in religious liberty and First Amendment rights with legal expertise shaped by her time at Emory University School of Law and the American Center for Law and Justice. She's also a former Teacher for America's educator. She is passionate about protecting religious freedom in the schools, and she has provided legal commentary on major platforms such as Fox News, Washington Examiner, and the Daily Signal. What an exciting background, Keisha. I mean, what got you into this field, first of all?
Well, as you mentioned, I started as a teacher and I really loved being an advocate for my students. Excuse me. And during that process, I felt really called to go to law school. So I was in higher education and then I taught for a couple of years, and I felt that I really had a talent for advocacy. And so I decided to go to Emory, and I was drawn to Emory because within the school, they have a Center for the Study of Law and Religion. And I thought those intersections were so incredible. And so I studied under a rabbi while I was there and learned about religious liberty litigation. And that's kind of how I was able to, I applied to First Liberty, and then I was able to come here and continue my litigation in this area. So I was very fortunate to get a job like this right out of law school.
That's amazing. Actually, it really is impressive. And was there something in particular that just made you go, I have got to get into this field? I mean, I realize that you just felt led, called, but did something stir it up? Did something happen in particular?
I don't know if I could point to one thing. I will say I think my relationship with God was what drove me, because I felt like there were a lot of believers, and not just Christians, but people of faith in general that didn't really understand their legal rights.
Mhm.
Didn't understand the Constitution, didn't understand what those provisions, those important provisions in the First Amendment actually mean for them. And
Mhm.
I felt really driven by that. I really wanted
Mm.
people to understand what those provisions meant, and why they need to fight for them, fight to keep them.
That's right. I think it's very interesting because I think you hit the nail on the head with it. Well, there are a lot of people that don't understand their First Amendment rights, and sometimes I think we take them for granted until we run into that one particular thing that becomes so important to our lives, specifically in the area of religion and faith, etc. And there are some things that people do not realize that are slowly being taken away, which is what I believe is the purpose behind your book, Uncommon Courage. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and why did you decide to write that book, and what exactly do you teach people through your pages?
Sure. So I wrote the book largely because of what I was seeing as a religious liberty litigator, and because of a lot of the conversations I had with some of the members of my church and people in the body of Christ, and listening to them talk about America generally and the Constitution, and realizing they didn't really have a lot of information about what the Constitution really means and what their rights are. And so I really wanted people of faith in general to have an understanding of what, number one, the foundation of America being Christian in many respects. Now, that doesn't preclude anyone from being any other religion,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
important to understand how and why Christianity informed the founders about being able to put together a free republic. And
Mhm.
so I talk a lot about that transition in my book, the transition between America being a very young country after being free from England, and then realizing that we can't just be completely free, we have to have some kind of structured government. And then going from that to understanding that, okay, this is how our government should work, this is how we should put it together. And that's really sort of the basic premise of the book. And then once I sort of inform the reader about those things, I move on to some pretty, the hot topics,
Mm,
abortion and marriage and education and the
mm.
media and things like that. And so my goal is for Christians in particular, but people of faith generally, to understand how to explain what they believe to others, and to do so in a way that is compassionate but uncompromising.
I
And
love that.
mhm.
No, I absolutely love that, because do you find that today, you said something very important, that we really need to understand the Christian principles behind the forming of our nation. And I actually am currently studying the Constitution. I'm working on a doctorate, and we're going deep into this, and it's just amazing. You see the contrast between, excuse me, what is being said, especially through the media and the school system, versus what is. Do you feel like, the true formation of our documents, our founding documents, and then just the heart of how our nation was formed? Do you feel like it's up for battle? Do you feel like it's being reduced? What do you think about that?
Well, I think in the past couple of years, certainly in the last decade, you see this erosion of patriotism and being pro American, realizing that we do live in the best country in the world. There's just no question about that.
Right.
And educating students about why that is and why they should fight for our American ideals and our American freedoms. Now, that doesn't mean America is perfect, because people aren't perfect and people run the
Right.
government. But the foundation upon which our country rests is pretty unshakable, and it's pretty remarkable what has happened
Hmm.
in the last, couple hundred years about, and why we developed America the way we did, and the fact that we succeeded and continuing to have a free country when so many people around the world don't have that. And so if we don't understand why, we don't understand the basis upon which our country is founded, we can lose it. Because if you
That's
don't
right.
understand your rights, somebody can take them from you.
That's right. That's a very important part. Can you share with our viewers a story of something that's going on right now, or something in the past, a case that may help us understand the importance of what you fight for? Because once again, I do believe that a lot of times we don't understand how important this is until we run into it.
Mhm.
So can you share a case with us, something that can help us put some pieces together and go, oh, okay, this is what they mean by fighting for your religious freedom, etc.
Yeah. So one case particular that I'm working on right now is with a teacher named Marisol Castro, who's in Connecticut. She's been teaching for 32 years in a public school, and she always keeps, like, in her personal workspace in the classroom, a crucifix. She's Catholic, and it helps her to sort of calm herself and connect with the Lord throughout the day. And after 10 years of having this particular crucifix in her classroom, she was told by the district that if she didn't take it down, she was going to be disciplined and then fired. And so right now she's on paid administrative leave because she refused to take it down. And there's some more back and forth there where they asked her to put it under the desk and all kinds of things. And she just ultimately said, I can't do that. I feel that's disrespectful to my faith. And so she asked First Liberty to help her. And, that's, I think, one of the reasons why what we do is so important at First Liberty is because Marisol Castro is just like most people who are watching your show. There's no way they could afford millions and millions of dollars in legal fees to fight a case like this. And what we do for free. And so we're trying to help Marisol Castro right now get her job back with the school district, because what they're doing is a violation of the Constitution, unquestionably.
Yeah.
The free speech clause says that, and this is the easiest way for people to understand it, but the free speech clause says that if the government is going to allow teachers to put whatever they want in their personal workspace, they cannot ban religious objects.
Mm.
And that's very clear, and it's a very crisp way of describing the law. But even now in 2025, we've got school districts that do not understand that teachers have religious liberty rights, and there's some that don't even understand that students have religious liberty rights. I've represented several students, young people, teenagers, who wanted to start Bible clubs. Um,
Mhm.
one of my latest clients was Elijah Nelson, and he, a middle schooler in New York, he wanted to start a Bible club, and the school said, no, you can't start a religious club. Now, that is actually already codified in a law called the Equal Access Act, which says that if schools are going to have any kind of extracurricular clubs, that they have to allow religious clubs too. So there's no question, that the school district was breaking the law there. And of course, we had to go and send a letter on behalf of Elijah in order for him to be able to start this club. So there's a number, I mean, I could give you so many examples with teenagers, with teachers, with postal workers, whatever it is. And a lot of these cases, the law is very clear. And it's because the government either is ignorant to that or doesn't think that should be the law, whatever it is, and they push back.
Well, I have a question for you because I was reading something, I can't remember where exactly, but I was reading something about how, I think it had to do, actually, I think it was your case, actually, you guys' case. Coach Joe, is it Coach Joe? Okay.
Kennedy, Coach Joe Kennedy.
Yes, Joe Kennedy. Yes. Where if somebody who has it's not a Christian religion, forgive me for not knowing exactly what religion it would be, but they wear the head wraps. So wearing the head wraps, it's a religious symbol. And so wouldn't that be the same thing as a person carrying the crucifix? But one person in many cases has been allowed to wear that which represents their faith. But Christians have been under major attack, mostly I would say even between, I think it all started around 2008 and then all the way up to present day, which I will ask you about in just a bit. But not that it's only been going on since then. I just mean it's intensified since then. So is it the same thing when somebody wears some other kind of form of representation of their faith? Is it the same thing for a Christian who wants to do that? Because I know personally that the education system actually really came down on Christian, I'm specifically speaking of Christians and teachers and their faith, and not allowing them to represent those little things that make them go, okay, you know what, I'm having a hard day. This is what I use to remind myself that, God is with me, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're right that the case law is going to protect Christians the same as it protects anyone else, Muslims or Sikhs or anyone who has sort of what they call demonstrable demonstrations of the religion, whether that be a cross around your neck, whether that be hijab, or whether that be a yarmulke. All of those things are something that everyone can see, including students, and the law does protect both a teacher and a student's right to wear that. And that includes any government employee, not just a teacher. So, excuse me. Yeah, the case law absolutely protects it, but I think you're right that Christians have been targeted in a way. And there, I think, are a lot of reasons for that. I think it would be difficult to speculate because a lot of religions don't endorse some of the things that the culture has embraced, and the culture doesn't seem to have as much it's not as antagonistic towards some of those other religions as it is towards Christianity. And so it's hard to say why that is. It could be just because Christianity is the majority religion, and in some ways I think the culture has become sort of the anti what they view to be majority, even though in some ways the culture has become the majority, right? The majority voice. And so, yeah, I think what you're saying is completely correct, that any sort of demonstrations of your religion are protected. And I think Christians tend to face more targeting in that. And I've definitely seen that in my work at First Liberty, that Christians tend to be targeted heavily, as well as Jewish people. A lot of targeting of Jewish people.
I'm glad you're addressing this because I actually think that I saw it firsthand where teachers were forced, to kind of quiet down who they were, et cetera. I actually think, and this is my opinion, not necessarily yours, unless, you're welcome to speak on your own, but I actually think that that's part of the reason why the fact that we were, formed on strong Christian principles. And I'm actually even a little more passionate about just beyond Christian principles, because if you look at the forming documents, they are so directly connected to God, the God of the Bible. And so But I think that's another reason why we're seeing an attack on how we were formed. Because if we can silence that, then we can silence any kind of biblical convictions, and therefore, I think that's part of what's being played out here. What would you say to that?
Well, I agree in some respects because I think, number one, because there's sort of this push to be anti-American, anti-patriotic, to say that America is, say, racist and all these things. All those things will lead to you despising Christianity when someone says that Christianity is the basis for
Mm-hmm.
American government, right? Now, there's a difference, right? Because those same principles don't always show up in the way the government behaves, and that's because the government is run by people. So people are
Right.
not always going to live up to those principles. And so I think that ultimately that sort of inclination to despise Christianity is sort of wrapped up in some of America's history, some of the things that we know have happened that we're not proud of as Americans, right?
Right.
Slavery and civil
Right.
rights and all
Yeah.
these things. But I always tell people, well, it's because of those principles that we were able to fix those problems in the first place.
Yeah.
Because we're able to say slavery does not comport with the Declaration of Independence.
That's right.
The civil rights and segregation and things like that. Segregation does not comport with the fact that all men are created equal. It
That's
doesn't
right.
comport with, this idea that all human beings should be looked at the same. And certainly doesn't comport with the Christian principle that all men are made in the image of God. And so
That's
I
right.
think all of those things are wrapped up together. And if you taint the foundation of America or you see it as tainted, then you're also going to see Christianity as tainted and so forth. So, and
Right.
therefore Christians. So you may have animosity towards Christians because you believe they have flawed belief system.
Yeah. Do you feel like the media has played a part in it? And do you feel like our education system is playing a part in this?
Oh, absolutely. I think in many of our cases at First Liberty, the media, mainstream media, tends to be very antagonistic towards our cases. Now, Coach Kennedy is somewhat of an anomaly because that case went on for so long, nearly a decade, and we were able to go to the Supreme Court, and we were able to, I mean, we have a great marketing communications team here, and they were able to kind of get Coach Kennedy's story out in a way that it was difficult to see him as anything but a human being, an average person, a coach who loved his players and just wanted to pray. And so, but even with that, even with our push to make sure his story gets out, we were still met with all kinds of people who said we were just um, Christian nationalists or whatever, right? And none of that is true. It's just, I think the media has been antagonistic towards the Christians, the foundation of America, and all of that for many, many years. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think they play a part. And certainly the education system plays a part because we've been educating students to not respect their country, to not
Yeah.
be grateful for the country that they live in. And therefore, if you don't like the country you're in, if you're not grateful for it, then in my opinion, it's going to be very difficult for you to contribute to that
That's right.
country in a meaningful way because you don't really want to be a part of the system. And you
Right.
have to be a part of it if you want to change it. That's just how this works. So,
Absolutely.
mhm.
I think even some of the violence that we've seen, even in our nation with the younger generations, I think it just makes it easier because they've been taught to cultivate that hate for the nation, et cetera, et cetera. But this is where we live. We've really got to find a way. Again, like you've mentioned before, there's some things we're not proud of, et cetera. But we have to find a way to redeem that time and find a way to find the good in our nation. This is where we live, et cetera. Would you say that? So recently, President Trump won the election, and clearly he is very pro religious freedom. And I actually don't believe he's just pro religious freedom for Christianity. I actually think he is pro religious freedom, period. I think he happens to share a Christian faith himself. Therefore, he, is so connected with so many people who, you've seen publicly, they pray for him, etc. But do you feel like now that he is in the White House, have you seen a difference already? I mean, I know it's been a very short period of time, but do you feel like there's already been some shift in what's going on with religious freedom and Americans?
Well, definitely, because the Biden administration was, in my view, pretty antagonistic towards Christians, specifically religion in general. And so when you start with sort of the mandates for the vaccines, and not to say anything about vaccines one way or the other, but there was definitely a lot of antagonistic behavior by the Biden administration for people who did not believe that they should get that. And whenever the government is behaving in a way that demonstrates religious discrimination, it gives license to the public to do it as well. And you can see that mirrored in what happened during the days of segregation and all that. The government is giving license to a certain behavior, and so people feel enabled and emboldened in that behavior. And so now that we have a friendlier administration, I can definitely see a bit of a change in trend for sure, related to religious discrimination, because in many of our cases are against the administration, against the United States of America, against the government. And I think now that we have a shift in administration, there could be a shift in the position they take on our cases, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely we're optimistic about what will happen in some of those cases, because the Trump administration is now on board and we don't have to deal with like the antagonistic Biden administration. And so that does, for us, we definitely see a difference there. And then the other thing is, because the Trump administration has demonstrated that they are pro-faith, I think a lot of government entities will think twice
Mhm.
about being overtly discriminatory, because they don't want to have to deal with, the Trump administration and the sounding board saying what you're doing is wrong, please stop. So
Yeah.
that it definitely makes a difference who the president is. It definitely makes a
Mhm.
difference whether the government is pro religious freedom or not.
Mhm.
It's very important who is
Mhm.
in leadership, and that includes governors of your state and all of that.
Absolutely. I agree with that. One of the concerns that I have, Keisha, is that right now we're seeing this shift slowly just because, President Trump is pro faith. But what I worry about is what's going to happen when he leaves. I think about that even with all the great news, the media, especially conservative media, they're so excited about all the great things. And so am I. But I want to know, what are we going to do to ensure that these freedoms remain in place, that we don't revert, and that they don't come back with a major vengeance, because now we've got 4 years of this pro-faith president and administration, and it starts to trickle down. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that is there anything that we can do to see it more solidified?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, and why I feel like it's so important right now, because you can't just rely on leadership. You have to know that we have a citizenry that is going to make the right choice every time, or at least most of the time. And you can only guarantee that when your citizenry is informed. That means when the people are informed, when they understand when they're being lied to, when they can spot deception, and they don't fall for it. That's how we make sure we don't get back to a place where we have leadership that's going to be antagonistic toward religion, or American principles as a whole. And so I think the next 4 years, it's really important for um, conservatives, people of faith, to keep each other informed, to make sure that we completely understand what we're being told and whether it's true or not by the media or by the government or whatever. And we can ensure that the next time there's an election, that the people will make the right choice.
I hope so. I definitely look forward to that. If you are tuned in, you are tuned in with Keisha Russell. She is a senior counsel at First Liberty. And I want to just show an image of your book really quickly because I think it'd be a great read. I think people need to go out there and get a copy and inform themselves. Uncommon Courage with Keisha Russell. Make sure you get a copy of her book. Keisha, can you tell us where people can get a copy of this book?
Well, it's wherever you get your books. Definitely, it's on Amazon. You can get it at my publisher's website, which is Harvest House, and in bookstores. So anywhere you want to get it. But I think it'll be very informative. I talk about how to spot lies in the media. I talk about the education system. I talk about the criminal justice system. And I think, dive pretty deeply into those topics, at least providing everyone a foundation to start. If you are passionate about any of those topics, I definitely
Mhm.
give you some good meat to chew on, and then you can kind of move on and do more studying on your own. But I think it provides a great foundation for anyone who wants to understand more about the foundation of America, the Christian principles related to that foundation, and then why a lot of the things that we are being told by the media in all of those topics are incorrect. And so
Mhm.
I really want people to be informed about what's happening in our country so that they can respond accordingly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, just out of curiosity, does First Liberty and your organization, do they defend people of non-Christian faith?
Yes, we do. We defend people of all faiths, and we do it for free, as I mentioned.
Mm,
And it's because we know that if the government can take away religious freedom for one group, if they can take it away from Muslims, if they can take it away for Sikhs, if they can take it away for Hindus, then they can and will take it away for Christians. And
mm,
so that's the reason why we think it's very important. The First Amendment applies to everyone, not just people you like or don't like.
that's right.
And a lot of times we do hear those messages in the media. The people we like should get freedom, the people we like should get rights, but the people we don't like shouldn't. And that's one of the reasons why we have a republic and not a pure democracy, is because
Mhm,
sometimes the majority is wrong and sometimes they're pushing for something because they just don't like a certain group of people. And so it's important that we understand that. And the other thing that I point out as my book is that we have to understand that we're all capable of being deceived. And we all have an inclination to be wrong about things. And it's important that we know that we're not any different than people who have been deceived in other countries, right?
mm,
That subjected themselves to authoritarian power or were able to, say, elect someone who was going to be a tyrant over them.
yeah,
Those people thought they were doing the right thing. A lot of them did. And
yeah,
they were deceived. And they were deceived because their own minds told them that they were more important or deserved more rights than people who they didn't
mm.
like.
Very interesting. I think it's important that you're bringing that up because, I think that a lot of times, like you said, deception is subtle and it's subtle. It's it's slow. It's in increments. It's favorable at first. Hey, we're looking out for you, kind of thing, and then the government is able to do what the government wants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this may be an off question, but I think I'm interested in knowing: are people of other faiths, Muslim, Sikhs, are they usually conservative politically, or does that even come up? I'm trying to make the connection there because I know that a lot of Christians who believe in who understand and believe in the First Amendment are usually pretty conservative. Is it the same thing?
In my experience, yes, but I can't say I know specifically about what those populations think about all current events. But in
Mhm,
my experience, yes, I found them to be very conservative in their thinking about a lot of things. Although we've represented people who are religious, but not what I would call culturally conservative necessarily. So
mhm.
I've seen both ways, but generally, yes, they tend to be very conservative, and a lot of times they're getting in trouble because of their conservative beliefs.
Hmm.
So
Wow. Well, thank you for answering that. So, Keisha, it looks like First Liberty does some amazing work. They're doing it for free. You've mentioned several times they do it for free. And as we wrap up, would you tell me how in the world do they fund this? Like, what is going on at First Liberty that they can just pass out free services here? Tell us about this.
So we fundraise. We have a great development
Mm,
team and they do a lot of fundraising for us. Our marketing team does it as well. And if you go to firstliberty.org, we encourage people who go to the website to donate. Any amount is helpful because we cover all legal fees for our clients. We, are very cognizant of the fact that many people would not be able to fight any of these cases if they had to pay all the money. Coach Kennedy's case would have cost millions and millions of dollars,
can you imagine?
and there's no way he would have been able to
Mhm.
dish out all that money in order to defend himself. So we recognize that these kinds of cases are always going to come with people who are just average people. They're not necessarily going to have $10 million in the bank to hand over to
That's
a big
right.
firm, and so we try to give them world class quality litigation services, um, with no cost, because we feel like as a ministry, God has called us to do this for our clients, and we are called to do it for his kingdom and also for our country.
There you go. That's beautifully said. So there you go, friends. Those of you who are tuned in with Keisha Russell, Senior Counsel at First Liberty, you have a lot more freedom than you realize you do. So if you're dealing with someone who has said, you know what, I feel like I've been going through something, my employer, my school, etc., they don't want me to show any signs of my Christian faith or any other faith, make sure you reach out to First Liberty. I actually read a lot of your cases, and I thought they were absolutely wonderful. Keisha, how can people reach you if they want to learn more about you and your book?
Well, I have a website. You can go to Keisha Tony with an I, KeishaTonyRussell.com. And that will have more information about me and my book and speaking engagements. And then you can go to firstliberty.org if you're having any sort of, religious liberty problem, or if you want to donate, or if you want to sign up for our newsletter. We have an incredible newsletter called First Liberty Insider, and that gives you information about what's going on, what the new things going on in the Trump administration, how they're improving religious liberty, and also it provides a lot of updates on our cases. So very informative newsletter. I recommend everyone subscribe to that.
There you go. Well, friends, there you have it. Make sure you go check this out. Make sure you follow her on social media as well. I know you're out there. What are a couple of your handles?
At Keisha Tony Russell, you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook at that
All
handle.
right. There you go. All right, Keisha, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Thank you for educating us and helping us feel more empowered about our religious freedom in the workplace and in the schools. And so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what First Liberty is doing. God bless you guys. Keep up the good work. And my friends, we'll see you again soon. Take care and God bless.